Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to whenever you're watching this. Today I have a special video for you guys. Today I'm going to be ranking detectives slash vigilantes, their chances on capturing Hannibal Lecter from the TV show Hannibal. For those of you who don't know who Hannibal Lecter is, he is a genius superhuman-like serial killer who eats his victims to dispose of the bodies. Essentially, Hannibal the Cannibal. This fictional serial killer has actually never been caught before in the TV show, just like Dexter. The only reason Hannibal went into custody anyways was because he turned himself in to be able to keep seeing Will Graham, and not because he was caught by evidence for his crimes as the Chesapeake Ripper. So, could these characters find out that Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper and throw him in jail, or not? But before we get into the tier list, let me explain the rankings for you guys. Coming in at S tier is they'd put Hannibal behind bars, which is pretty self-explanatory. They'd find out he's the Chesapeake Ripper, but couldn't put Hannibal behind bars because they have lack of evidence. They'd have their suspicions, which means they would notice that something's off with Hannibal, maybe, and they would just get put on his plate, which means Hannibal would just eat them and kill them. So the first person that we have on this list is L from Death Note. Now, L is a super genius, and he's kind of like Bruce Wayne in a way because he's super rich, and when you're super rich like Bruce, for example, you have gadgets and resources at the tip of your fingers that no regular citizen or even detective would ever have the access to, let alone could even buy. But besides that, L always had his suspicions and always kind of figured that Kira was indeed Light Yagami, but he can never really prove it with solid hardcore evidence because of the supernatural power that Light possessed, the Death Note. So with that being said, in my opinion, I think L would automatically 100% find out that Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper, just like Will Graham did. And if Will Graham did, L can, because L is far more intelligent than Will. But keep in mind, Will is still like very, very intelligent, so don't get that twisted at all. But could L prove that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper and put him behind bars? Because it's one thing to know that he's the Chesapeake Ripper, but it's another thing to put him behind bars. As we know, Hannibal is a master manipulator, an expert at covering his tracks, and highly skilled at psychological warfare. And this, in my opinion, is one of his insane skills that he possesses. L, with none other than his genius level deduction skills and unconventional methods that he possesses, I think that L would notice the inconsistencies in Hannibal's behavior, his connections to the victims, and the subtle clues others would overlook. Hannibal operates in a way that leaves little to no tangible evidence, often manipulating the system to his advantage. But the real question, in my opinion, is would L be able to outmaneuver Hannibal before Hannibal found a way to eliminate L first? Because, unlike Kira, Hannibal wouldn't hesitate whatsoever to kill somebody that's trying to pursue him, as we've seen multiple times. So for this one, genuinely, I think it's very, very, very hard, because L could either be in this tier or put Hannibal behind bars. And honestly, I think L with enough time could definitely put him behind bars. Next, we have Patrick Jane from The Mentalist. So starting right off the bat, Patrick Jane is the one who actually caught and killed Red John, and in my opinion, I'd say Red John and Hannibal are practically identical if you think about it. For example, they're both super geniuses, master manipulators, made other people their scapegoats, and they even have similar respected jobs to help them further blend in, Hannibal being a therapist and Red John being a sheriff. But also keep in mind, it took Patrick years to finally catch and kill Red John, and Red John was toying with him from the start by killing his family. Just like Hannibal's cat and mouse game with Will Graham. Although Hannibal didn't kill Will's family, it still kind of matches up. So again, keep in mind, if Patrick were ever to take on Hannibal, it wouldn't be a quick or easy case at all. He'd be facing an opponent who thrives on psychological manipulation. And the biggest difference there is, in my opinion, is that Hannibal operates on a much deeper level of sophistication. But Patrick's immense advantage that he has is that he's already survived a game like this before. He knows what it's like to be toyed with, to be psychologically tortured by a genius who sees him as an amusement. This means he wouldn't fall for the same traps that Will Graham did. He wouldn't be manipulated into sympathizing with Hannibal. Instead, he'd study him. But honestly, with all of this said, the real question is, would Patrick handle Hannibal the same way he handled Red John? Because at the end of The Mentalist, he actually, as I already said, he killed Red John. But the thing is, he didn't have enough evidence to make it uphold in a court of law. He just outright killed him. And in my opinion, for this one, even though Patrick Jane is very, and I mean very intelligent. I just think that he'd find out that he's the Chesapeake Ripper, and I don't think he would have enough evidence to convict Hannibal as a Chesapeake Ripper. Coming in next, we have Alex Mahone from Prison Break. So Mahone's biggest strength lies in his obsessive nature. When he locks onto a target, he doesn't let go whatsoever. His experience in tracking down escapees and serial killers would give him definitely an edge in noticing some patterns that others might miss. However, Hannibal is literally unlike any criminal Mahone has ever faced. Hannibal doesn't make mistakes the way most of the fugitives do. He doesn't leave behind desperate traces or act out of impulse. Every kill that Hannibal does is very calculated. I mean, for God's sakes, it's so hard to catch Hannibal because he literally eats his victim. Even if Mahone began to suspect Hannibal, he would likely struggle with proving it. Like at all. Much like he did with the Fox River escapees. Hannibal wouldn't just be a step ahead. I feel like he would recognize Mahone's weaknesses, his history with addiction, and also it's very possible that rather engaging in a direct game of cat and mouse, Hannibal would just most likely manipulate Mahone into absolute self-destruction. I mean, Hannibal has already done this on other killers before in the show while he's giving therapy. I mean, look at Will Graham, for example. He completely made himself destruct. Will Graham lost control of time, literally. And honestly, guys, for Alex, I feel like he would just be put on Hannibal's plate. Next, we have Jim Gordon from Batman. So Jim Gordon, as one of Gotham's most skilled and determined detectives, would have a tough time taking on the Chesapeake Ripper. Come on, let's just be real. Because unlike Batman, who can literally operate outside the law, Gordon is restricted by legal procedures. However, I mean, I'll give this to him. He has years of experience with dealing with Gotham's worst enemies, like the Joker, Riddler, and other serial killers like Victor Zsasz. I feel like Gordon would have some instinct and some suspicions that something's wrong with Hannibal, but I don't think he'll pinpoint Hannibal as a killer. I think he'll just literally have suspicions. Like, this guy's pretty interesting, and he's kind of off, but I'll keep him in the back of my head. But I wouldn't put him on Hannibal's plate solely for the reason that he has Batman on the side to defend him if needed. So he's definitely going to have his suspicions. So if Gordon in some absolute crazy universe finds out that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper and Hannibal tries to come after him because he's pursuing Hannibal, Batman would just swoop in and defend him. Next, we have James Doakes from Dexter. So Doakes actually has a pretty decent background. He's a pretty good detective, and he's former special forces. So honestly, I feel like he would immediately sense that something's off with Hannibal, just like he was the only one in Miami Metro to see through Dexter's act. But then again, Dexter was pretty socially awkward, so I don't think it would be that easy for Doakes to have his suspicions against Hannibal, because Hannibal has more charisma and understands how to, socially interact better with people. Doakes is direct, aggressive, and, very, and I mean very action driven. This guy literally tailed Dexter for 2 seasons because he wanted to prove that something's up with Dexter, which works both for him and against him. But unlike detectives, as I already mentioned, like L, Patrick Jane, or even Jim Gordon, Doakes doesn't really rely on psychological tactics. He follows his gut and confronts suspects head on. This is what I love about him so much. As we know, Hannibal is nothing like Dexter. I feel like he wouldn't need to sneak around Doakes or even avoid suspicion. He would take control of the situation before Doakes even realized what's happening, because as we know, Hannibal is literally 2 steps ahead of everybody. And also, unlike Dexter, who hesitated to kill Doakes because he didn't fit his code, Hannibal wouldn't back down at all. I feel like he would just kill Doakes if he ever got too close, 100%. So I kind of have to put Doakes on they'd be on Hannibal's plate because he doesn't really have anything to defend himself against Hannibal. And next we have Batman. Now, let me just make a new tier for this character because, he's Batman. Batman would just 100% find out and then just throw him in jail. I mean, if you ever played Batman Arkham Knight, bro captured over how many villains, threw them all into one jail cell and called it a night. It's Batman, for God's sakes. So there's literally no debate for Batman there, 100%. So this is my list. What do you guys think? I think I kind of cooked, to be honest, but I could be wrong in some of these tiers. So leave your comments down below. Where would you rank these characters?